Story 1. The Summer House. When I was in college, there was this old abandoned house just past a daffodil farm. It was at one time a summer home for a wealthy family from Charlotte, but it was now torn up and very run down. There's a big farmhouse type house in front, and then there was a brick building right behind it. Then, behind that, on either side, were concrete one-level rooms, separate from that building. Then, behind those, was a big barn. We used to go in the house because they said it was haunted. And trust me, it is. We went there during the day, and you could hear voices, several voices. I turned back from standing at the barn and saw a woman standing in the top right back window of the very first house. I looked away for a split second and looked back and realized that you cannot actually see that window from where I was standing. The second building blocks it. I thought maybe I was imagining it, but another person with me had saw the same thing. I went there one night with a friend, and it was dark and misty. We went into the house. We had got inside the front door and walked to the front right room. I turned and saw a figure standing in the next room, facing me. He was a gray figure of an older man, and he looked so very sad. I felt a deep and stabbing sadness go from the top of my head all the way down to my feet. The friend that was with me was asking me questions about what I saw, and I quietly explained to him, but I had a hard time speaking, and I couldn't really move. When my friend got to the door of that room where the figure had been standing, the figure had disappeared. We left right after, and the next morning I found myself hugging one of my stuffed animals, curled up in the fetal position, sucking on my thumb. To this day, I can still see that figure in my mind and feel that sadness, as if it was fresh and new. Story 2. Lost Time. It was late spring, so it gets darker a little bit later, but school was still in session. So we had spent the evening at the kids' grandparents' house. They had rode the school bus to their grandparents' house after school each day, as we had just moved to a new house, but didn't want to switch schools just yet. We left about 5 o'clock, and we were heading home, when all of a sudden it got dead quiet. We were still in the community the grandparents lived in, an old coal camp town. Suddenly it got dark, and we saw what looked like a coal truck in the sky, with lights on the front that looked like the Night Rider car. And then, poof, we were all of a sudden driving through town, and we decided to get supper. But when we looked at the clock in the car, it was 11:30 at night. This was the late 80s, and restaurants in our small town didn't stay open late, so nothing was open. We don't know what happened or where the time went, but when we got home, we had a message on our answering machine from my mom wanting to know what time we had got home. We didn't get home until after midnight. That trip should have taken maybe 40 minutes tops. Had ended up taking about 7 hours or so. The kids had school the next day, and they ended up not going. We were all just too tired. We still don't know what happened. Story 3. The Red-Eyed Man. This is about the house I grew up in. The house was built in the 70s, and only 2 families had ever lived there. Mine and the original owners. Neither one had any deaths occur in the house. One night my sister had 2 friends over to spend the night. There were 3 of them, and they were the only ones there. My sister went upstairs to sleep in her room, and her friends were sleeping downstairs in the den on the couches. Very early in the morning, my sister woke up to bone-chilling screams coming from the den. She grabbed the heaviest thing she could find, intent on knocking the crap out of whoever had broken in and was scaring her friends. When she got downstairs, she threw the light switch on and found her friends cowering in the corner, ghost white. After some prodding, she got them to tell her that there had been something floating above the doorframe. They said it had red eyes and that it wiggled and jiggled around the ceiling until the point where she turned the light on. At first she thought that it must be someone's brake lights that had reflected into the room somehow. But there's no road behind the house, and there's no way a car could have gotten near the back windows. The rest of my family pretty much dismissed this as a hoax. Not that the girls were deliberately making it up, but that it must be some sort of reflection, and they were misinterpreting it. I didn't really think much about it until one weekend when I went home to visit. I rolled over in my bed and saw 2 red eyes staring at me. I didn't really know what to do. They were about 4 or 5 feet away from me, floating along the wall. They were only about 3 feet off the floor, much lower than their first sighting. I figured that either the thing was going to mess with me or leave me alone. So I opted to just close my eyes and see what happened. When I opened them a few minutes later, the creature was gone. No one has seen the ghost since, and I'm pretty sure he's still here, and has been here much longer than we even realized. As a child, many unexplained things happened, mostly in my room. The radio would turn itself on or off, as would the lights, and sometimes my toys. But the ghost doesn't hurt anybody, so I guess he can stay. Story 4. The Woman. One night, about a year or so ago, I was sound asleep in my bed, and suddenly I woke up at 2:30 a.m. I guess what caused the interruption was a noise outside or something. I turned over to find what looked like the figure of a woman standing over me smiling. I closed my eyes for a brief second, and when I opened them again, she was still there. I was so scared, I started screaming for my mom, and the figure disappeared. I don't know whether this was a weird hallucination or a brief visit from one of my deceased relatives. All I know is, I hope I never see her again. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Bye.